Welcome to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Thank you so much for being here. As I was saying, we met back in actually we started talking back in 2020. No. Yeah, at the end of 2020, I think. And when you were asked to be a keynote speaker at the Centercore fundraiser here in Waco, and so I knew some stats on you, but I am your I don't want to say typical girl, but let's just say in my household, my husband does not allow me to watch football with him because I ask too many questions. And when my son played football. I would get in trouble because anytime they would say his name over the loudspeaker, of course I'm going to cheer. Well, a lot of times it wasn't a good time that they were saying, or for a good move that they were saying his name. So, but my husband and I were going over some of your stats last night, and I was.
Hey, offensive centers don't have many stats.
Well, I did not know that, but he was trying to school me on you, and of course I was going, give me a break, sir. I know all about him, and he said do you know he was a second round draft pick, and I said, oh, so they didn't pick him first, and he said, are you freaking kidding? I mean, so he went off on me on your behalf. So I'm ignorant when it comes to that. But you're from Tyler, Texas, originally. You attended Baylor University here and kicked ass up and down the ball field here, and then met your beautifully amazing wife Lydia here, which you are still happily married to today. And I'm so happy to know both of you, and I'm so blessed to know you. But then you were second round draft pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with whom you played almost 10 years.
Right.
Just shy of 10 years. So right. I got to tell you, I went on as I was doing a little bit of research last night. I got on. I think the website is randygrimespeaks.com. I think that's what it is. And I saw the video that you have posted on there that showed all of the players getting hit.
Yeah.
You know what video? I literally, Randy, I was physically sick to my stomach. I just thought, oh my God, how do you do that? How does a human body do that time after time? And then I saw the stat where you played in 118 games. That's a lot. And started in 104. So by my intellect, which I like to think is grandiose, that's a lot of times that you were probably made contact with as far as getting hit. So my question to you is, what type of injuries, just because I'm curious, what type of injury, what is a center?
Wait a minute, is that two questions?
That's two. Well, let's answer the second one first, because where do you play on the field, so that if other girls are listening, what position is that? What does that mean? What's your job?
Well, first of all, let me say congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
You know, this is awesome that you're doing this. We need this. People need to hear this message.
Amen.
Not from me, but from you. And congrats on all you've accomplished in such a short time with the show.
Thank you.
So I'm really proud of you. And
that
I'm
means a
honored
lot.
to be here.
That means a lot. Thank you.
All right. So that's my opening. And so a center is the guy that hikes the ball to the quarterback, for all the female viewers out there that might not know. And that's a center, not a centaur. I'm not half horse, half man.
Got it. So
what was the other question?
The next question was, what type of injuries did you sustain? Just overall, on a given Sunday, what kind of injuries would you sustain?
Well, and you mentioned that I played in 118 games. I started 104. I thought it was 107, but what you're not counting is also the practices.
Oh yeah.
And I played back in an era where we beat the hell out of each other all week long, because the coaching mentality back then was, if you don't practice hard, you're not going to play hard.
Wow.
So it was that old Bear Bryant mentality, that junction boy BS, and we beat the hell out of each other all week long. And hopefully there was enough left in the tank to play on Sunday. And so a lot of the injuries that I sustained, and when I say injuries, I say, sprains,
Oh, that's an injury.
fractures,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
uh, twists and turns and things like that, bruises, deep bruises, hip pointers, ribs,
Golly.
concussions, subconcussions. Those are the kind of events that started me on the journey that I eventually went on.
Right.
So, that was part of the game. That was, that's what you sign up for. That's what I signed up for when I started playing football back in fourth grade, and all the way through high school, and all the way through Baylor, and then 10 years in the NFL. That I knew what I was getting into, but I loved the game that much.
Right. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's scary to me. So tell me what happened. The whole goal of this show when I started it was to, like I said, to have people on to give the story of what it was like, what happened, and what you're like now. I've only known you on the other side of recovery, but can you share with me basically what happened?
Well, yeah. I was that guy willing to do whatever I had to stay out on the field. And, for me, that meant taking a handful of pain pills every day and practicing and playing through the different injuries I got. I can remember when I first got to the locker room in Tampa Bay after I'd just gotten drafted out of Baylor. I had a locker next to Leroy Selman, and you probably don't know who Leroy Selman is, but most of the football fans listening to this show will. And, he was a legend of the game. He was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' first draft pick ever back in '76. And I had a locker next to him. And this was before I'd even played my first game for the Bucs. This was like during my rookie training camp. And, we used to have these deep conversations. And I learned a lot about being a professional football player, not only on the field, but off the field from Leroy. But one thing I learned from him early was that football was no longer a game. It was now a job. And the second thing I learned from him was do whatever you have to stay out on that field, because if you're not out there in your position, somebody else will be. And you don't want to ever let that happen. So, I'm sure Leroy didn't mean take a handful of pain pills every day and practice and play through those injuries and the different things that were going on. But that's what I was willing to do. I mean, Christine, I didn't want to get that reputation of always being on the injury report, or always missing practice, or always being in the training room, or always being in line to see the doctor, because of an injury. I just wanted to keep my mouth shut, get dressed, and get in my position and play football.
And
that's what I did.
And keep your job. So, so question real quick. When you said that Leroy, basically, that's when it turned into a job. Did that change you in any way? Do you know what I mean? It's like, and obviously I have no equivalent point of reference, but there is a certain hobby that I do that I've been suggested you should do that. It's like, no, if I have to do it, if it's then it's not fun anymore. Did it change your mentality just because I'm curious towards football when you started looking at it as a job?
Well, the pressures of the what was then a game changed.
Okay, got it.
Because now it was a job, and there was always somebody trying to take your position.
Got it.
Obviously, the first time I got a paycheck for playing football, it blew my mind. I just couldn't believe that somebody would pay me to play a game that I would gladly have played for free.
Wow.
So that in itself was odd, but it actually was a very high pressure, a high pressure job.
Expectation.
And, I played 10 years in Tampa, and during those 10 years, I had 5 different head coaches.
Oh, wow.
So I had to prove myself about every 2 years, and make the team again, and not only make the team, but keep my starting position, because there was always a rollover. There was always new people coming in, not only in coaching, but new players, new front office people. And, that's one of the things that I'm most proud of is the fact that I was able to survive all those coaching changes and all those front office changes and even all the different quarterback changes we had. I probably played for 10 different quarterbacks.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So it was
amazing.
a revolving door around Tampa Bay in the 80s and early 90s.
Mm. So what?
And our record reflected that too, by the
Yeah,
way.
right. Well, and I just, yeah, that's yeah, I can't imagine that kind of pressure. That had to be, yeah, that had to be
And that was not anything that I had experienced at Baylor. I mean, Baylor, it was college football. It was still a game. It was fun. It was
fun.
coach staff. It was all my buddies. It was dorm life. It was roaming around the campus. Football was football. It was Georgia's,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And, everything that Waco had to offer, we enjoyed. And it was still a game. I met Lydia the first day my freshman year. We went out that night and got married after our junior year. And why we did that, I'll never know because we didn't have a pot to pee in or a window to throw it out. But we loved each other. And I knew I better get a ring on that
That's
right away.
right. That's right.
So, it was still a game. And I can remember getting drafted. I can remember sitting in that one bedroom efficiency on Fifth Street on the campus of Baylor and getting that phone call from Tampa Bay. And hell, I didn't even know where Tampa Bay was. I'd never even seen the ocean at that point. I was a kid from East
Oh,
Texas. So
wow.
that was huge for me. We packed up everything that we owned in a little U-Haul and hooked it up to my Burgundy Cutlass Supreme, and out I-10 East we went, and we were going to go start our family. We were going to starting our marriage, our family, and
The
my
whole
career in
life.
pro football. We were really excited.
Wow. That's amazing.
But that was back when it was still a game.
And yep, and then it starts. So walk me through. Let's obviously you're here to share on addiction, and so tell me when was your first because like my drug of choice is alcohol, and yours was different, but something in it, something I learned, and I see daily, whatever our vice is, the gates of hell are still the gates of hell, regardless
Right.
of what got you there. So I
Right.
think it's real important for anyone who's listening that might say, alcohol's not my thing or pills is not my thing,
It
whatever
all
your
brings
vice
you
is,
to the same
it
place,
all
right?
brings you to the same fiery gates of hell. And so the solution happens to basically be the same, in my humble opinion, after 11 years of this gig. So share with me your first experience with a substance that started you on that trail. What was your first experience like?
Well, my first experience was going and getting all the narcotics out of the drug safe. We had a drug safe in the middle of our training room that was never locked. It was wide open all the time, and it was just full of all the opiates and benzodiazepines that you
Oh,
needed.
wow.
And if it ever was locked, we had three white guys that started on defense, and their jersey numbers were the combination to the safe the whole 10 years that I was there. So
I'll
I could
be.
I could just get in whatever I wanted. So it started with me, like I said, being willing to do whatever I had to keep my mouth shut and stay out on the field. And I would just go get my own opiates. And I don't remember ever thinking, "Wow, this is great. I'm high. I feel great." I can just remember numbing up enough to get through practice every day.
Right.
And
Oh, wow.
what started as a once or twice or three times a week routine turned into an everyday routine. And then I started mixing benzodiazepines with that at night so I could get to sleep through the injuries that I had.
So
And
how early, when are we talking? Second year in?
we're talking about the middle of my second year there.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So, this went on for about 8 years of my career. And Christine, it progressed to the point that the last 2 years of my career, I was playing games in complete blackouts. I was taking so many opiates and so many benzodiazepines. And the benzodiazepine I was taking back then was Halcyon. And if anybody knows anything about those, those were kind of the granddaddy to Xanax. It was
which is alcohol in a pill. I mean, basically.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
and I was playing games in a complete blackout, and I was a starting center. I was the quarterback of the offensive line. I was getting guys going in the right direction. I was changing blocking schemes. I was doing everything that a center does, which is a lot when you get to the line of scrimmage, and having to listen for the quarterback snap count. I had to listen to the quarterback to change the play, and I was doing all of that in a blackout. I would be home late at night after playing a game at 1:00, either at home or somewhere in the country. And I would be laying on the couch, and about midnight, I would kind of start coming out of it. And I'd be all beat up and scratched up and dehydrated and fingernails all torn up and everything you are after an NFL football game. And I didn't remember any of it. And I had played every down. So, that's what it progressed to the last 2 years. It was definitely a full-blown addiction that I justified because I wanted to be the best center that I could be. I wanted to feed my family. I wanted that next big contract. I wanted to be all pro. And, I looked at it like a necessary evil instead of what it really was a full-blown addiction. And what's crazy is the 9 years that this was going on, not once did anybody ever say, hey, Randy, why are you slurring your words? Or, Randy, why are you nodding off in meetings? Or, Randy, why are you late to practice every day? Or why are you the last to leave the building every night? Pills are missing out of the drug safe. Nobody ever asked me those questions because I was always playing good.
So yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So did at any point, I mean, because there's a team doctor, right? I'm assuming. Did at any point so a doctor didn't go, how much are you doing? How many are you taking? Or there wasn't so you were never confronted at all with that?
Never. Matter of fact, I was getting them from the team doctor most of the time. We would leave after a home game, or, well, I'll tell you, after a home game, because it's easier to explain. After we played our game, we would get dressed, we would shower, we would get dressed. Our families would be waiting for us right outside the locker room door to the stadium. And as we left the stadium door there, a manager would be standing there with a little white envelope. And in that white envelope would be 2 Percocet, 2 Halcyon, and he would hand you 2 beers as you were walking past him with your car keys in your hand, going out to meet your family. What other occupation does that in the world,
Wow.
Besides the NFL back in the 80s and early 90s. And same thing happened on a plane flight back home from an away game. A manager would walk up the center aisle of that airplane, handing out that little white envelope and 2 beers. And if somebody didn't want it, of course, I was the first to ask them, get it and hand it to me. Because at that point I was already, I was in the midst of a full-blown addiction. So,
did you know it was an addiction, or did you were you in, in a certain book I read, it says we are in full flight from reality at some point. Did you know that there was an addiction going on, or were you just surviving day to day?
Yeah, well, I guess I never really, I refused to call it an addiction. What did I know about addiction back then? I just wanted to be the best football player I could be. I wanted to feed my family. I looked at it like a necessary evil. And when I knew that it was a real problem was the first time that I ran out, or I had to quit taking benzodiazepines to have a surgery that I needed on my shoulder. And when I did that, I had a seizure on the beach down in St. Pete, right in front of the Don Cesar Hotel. And I knew then that things had gotten out of control, but nobody else knew. Nobody else knew what I was doing and what I was putting in my body.
Were you still playing? You were still playing at that time, just waiting on a surgery?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did all the epilepsy test and seizure disorder test, and the fact that I just had a surgery on my shoulder, they kind of blamed it on that, but I knew that it was a result of withdrawal from benzodiazepines. So I knew then, and that was my next to my last year at Tampa. But you know what? I couldn't stop what I was doing at that point. I was in it, and I was willing to do whatever I had to continue to play football.
Wow. Wow.
And that's a pretty crappy excuse,
Well,
But
well, you know what
life,
though? Yeah, that
life
was your
wasn't
reality.
unmanageable at that point because I had all these enablers. I had all these team doctors and team trainers and teammates and fans outside the door. I had an unlimited supply, so life wasn't unmanageable at that point until I left the game.
So now, just because I'm curious, and you're not clearly, I mean, I'm not allowed to tell Rick's story, and you're not allowed to tell Lydia's story. Was there? How was she during this time? Did she recognize what was happening at all, or were you confronted at all by her at this time? During
She
this
had no
time,
idea.
really?
She had no, listen, we used to beat the hell out of each other all day in 108-degree heat, out on the practice field and the game field. So me coming home after practice or after a game and collapsing on the couch or collapsing on the bed, that was not a red flag for her,
Wow.
And so she really didn't have any idea of what was going on. And like I said, life hadn't gotten unmanageable at that point. So I can't blame her for what I was going through.
Oh, of course not. I was just curious if she had
Well, yeah, I was
pointed out.
home beat up, and so it wasn't a red flag at all.
So that was the norm. So when did things start finally catching up with what you were doing and starting to get unmanageable? When did that happen? What happened?
Well, yeah, and that happened after I retired. I never expected to take that what I was calling a necessary evil. I never expected to take it into my retired life, and the injuries just kept getting worse. Not that I was getting new injuries, but the old injuries were getting worse. The chronic pain was getting worse every day. My tolerance to the medication just kept getting higher, so I needed more and more pills all the time. And doctor shopping all over Houston, Texas, which is where we retired to after we left Tampa. That became a full-time job, and it was just it turned into a disease of more. I needed more and more and more all the time, and I had some great jobs in my retired life, and I lost every one of them because of those pills. And I had some great homes and cars and friends and relationships, and lost every one of those because the pills, because I couldn't stop that chaos, that I couldn't stop that insanity that went with it. And man, it had me, it had me good. And I wrecked a lot of relationships, and finally put my hand up in 2009. But you know what? That was after doing a lot of damage and leaving a huge wake of destruction behind me.
Wow. So how long had you been retired? Because you retired in when?
Yeah, I retired in 1993.
Oh, so you went there was a minute. Oh, wow. Okay.
20 plus years of misery I put people through. And, the new normal for me was emergency rooms and ambulance rides and lost jobs and lost homes and repoed cars and blowing through my finances and lost relationships. And that was the new normal for me because of that necessary evil that started back in the NFL.
Well, yeah, and I guess into retirement, you've got to find a new source for this medication. So when you were talking about, I think the layman terms of med seeking,
Man seeking, doctor shopping, whatever.
yeah, results are the same, basically trying to find someone to, but from what I understand, at least from what you have said in the past that I've heard you say, that you were taking so many pills, trying to find a physician to reasonably prescribe that kind of thing to you was near impossible.
No, not at all. I could walk in any doctor's office, and back then there was a lot of shady places around Houston. Kind of like the pill mill industry that was in South Florida all those years.
Right.
So you could pretty much walk in anywhere, especially with my NFL ring on and all the X-rays that I had, medical reports that I had, and throw it on their desk and pretty much get anything you wanted to. It was so unregulated back then, and now it's so much different. Thank goodness, it's saving lives as a result.
And the awareness,
then, pretty much anything goes, and whatever you had cash for is what you could get.
Wow. So tell me what that reckoning was like when you finally were beat into surrender.
Yeah,
what was that day like?
I can remember the last house that we didn't lose it in foreclosure, but we did have to short sell it. Okay, so I can remember, but the new owner wasn't going to take possession of it for like another 90 days. So I can remember moving all the furniture out of that house, cutting the utilities off, and I can remember Lydia having to take a step back. She just couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't continue to sit there and watch me kill myself, and so she moved in with her parents, and out of guilt and shame, pride, ego, whatever it was, I couldn't do it. So I stayed in that empty house with no utilities, no car, no job, no money in the bank. And I can remember laying on the floor of that vacant house in Houston, Texas, thinking, damn, I was a college All-American. I was a second-round draft pick.
You're a big deal.
I was a Pro Bowler. I was the 1988 NFL Man of the Year. I've got the sweetest wife. I married my dream girl. I've got two great kids that worship the ground I walk on. And here I am laying in the floor of this dark, empty house with no utilities, no job, no car, no money. And that's when I finally and I'd had a really good friend that I played with out here in Tampa Bay named Tom McHale. Played right next to him for many years, and he was doing the same things I was doing, self-medicating the injuries he got while he played in Tampa. And one morning in 2008, he just didn't wake up.
Oh, wow.
And I knew that was going to be me next. And and Christine, I was having lots of seizures because I was always running out of the benzodiazepines, the Xanax, and that was my other addiction besides the opiates. And so between the health issues, Tom, Lydia stepping out or stepping back away from me, because she couldn't take it anymore. My daughter not letting me see my first grandchild. Those were all the things that, unfortunately, that's what it took for me to finally put my hand up and ask for help. And, for so many years, I thought that there was a lot of guilt and shame there because I thought I was the only one out there like that. Here I was, this NFL player who had accomplished all this on the football field. And now I can't even keep a job, and I can't even keep my family together. I can't keep my life together. And for many years, I think that was the reason I didn't put my hand up, just out of guilt and shame. I was ready for my next handful of pills to be my last. And I think there was some pride and ego in there too. But Lydia was willing to make one more phone call for me. And back then, there was nothing out there for former NFL players because I'd lost my insurance. So whoever she talked to that day at the league office up in New York on Park Avenue knew somebody who knew somebody. And that's how I got on an airplane. And that was September 22nd, 2009. And that was, that's really my birth date.
Wow. Man, I'm so glad you made it to that day. So tell me what I want to hear what that day was like. What was that day like? So you you get the word that you need to be on a plane. How was it to get to even to walk down that jet bridge to get on that plane? What was that like?
Lots of fear.
Scared shitless, huh?
Lots,
I get
lots of
it.
fear.
Scared
Because
shitless.
I knew the damage that I'd caused my family. And that was the biggest thing, was what, yeah, I'm going to go out here and do this, but what am I going to come back to? How much are they willing to forgive me, for everything so there's a lot of fear with that. Of course, what was going to, at that point, I couldn't imagine life without pills. So it was like, I'm giving up my lover, or I'm giving up my crutch. I'm giving up what I think I had to have every day to get through. So I had that fear also, but I also had that gift of desperation, and I wanted things to change. I wanted my life back. I wanted my family back. I wanted my reputation back. I wanted my finances back. I wanted everything that I'd lost. I wanted it back, and so you know what, I was scared, but I was willing to do whatever they told me to do, and I did, and I have since.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I can remember we flew into Fort Lauderdale, and I had like 2 or 3 pills left in my pocket or something. So I took those
Of course you did.
I did. But I can remember that ride up there, and I can remember that it was an old dirty, beat up black town car that picked me up in Fort Lauderdale, and it drove me up to the treatment center in West Palm Beach. And I can remember thinking how stinky and dirty it was and all that. And I realized about halfway up there, the reason it was like that is because it picked up people like me all day.
Oh,
Uh,
ow, ouch. Oh.
and and that was, and you know what, I was so sick by the time I got up there. I was sick on the flight. I was sick when I got up there. And I can remember somebody opening the door from the outside, and I fell out of the car. And I had about another 30 feet to get through the door, and that's when I crawled on all fours to get through that doorway. And you know what? Nobody helped me, and I'm glad they didn't,
Right.
because I needed to do that myself.
Mm.
I needed to do that all by myself. And I kind of consider that my greatest accomplishment in life, is crawling through that door, because I was so scared. I was so sick, but that's what I needed to do to get my life back, and my family back, and my finances, and my reputation, and everything. And so I look at that night, September 22nd, 2009, crawling through that door, as my greatest accomplishment in life.
And isn't it beautiful? And because I can just tell just looking at you, isn't it beautiful how you can go back there in a second? I mean, in a second. I just recently celebrated 11 years, and I went and I sat in the parking lot of where my similar experience kind of happened, and I, because I, on that day I planned to take my life, and I can go back to that just soul crushing desperation. I can feel that. Just I think that for me, what saved me was God, and I believe that God allows me to feel that for just a second, because I think He saved me from that so that I'm so grateful that I can feel that for just a second, so I don't forget. And the gratitude that feeling gives me just is immeasurable.
Well, I think it's important that we don't forget. I think we need to go back there every now and then and remind ourselves of 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 what our next drink or our next drug or where it will take us. And because that's what it would be for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm that one who that one is too many and a thousand never enough. You know, I'm that guy. So, uh, you know, I go back there quite a bit. I had the good fortune of, you know, 2 weeks into my detox, I can remember sitting at a picnic table on the campus, and for some reason, I used to get up every morning while I was in treatment and just write. I had a spiral notebook, and I would just kind of write down and I don't know why, I'm not a big writer, but I would just write what was going on around me, how I felt, what was happening, and all that. And this one particular morning, it was at Wednesday, it was at 8:45 in the morning, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And I get to pass this place all the time, even still today. But I was sitting at this picnic table, and I couldn't stop sobbing. You know, I was crying, I was sobbing uncontrollably, and because for the first time in 20 something years, I was kind of having to deal with life on life's terms, clean and sober,
Mm.
and thinking about all the huge wake of destruction that I left back in Houston with my family and my friends and my finances and reputation and all that. And I just couldn't get a grip on myself. And Christine, I couldn't get over the obsession to throw pills down. And it was like somebody came up behind me and draped a warm quilt around my shoulders. And I say that because I remember feeling weight and warmth on my shoulders. And it was like I had this overwhelming something happened to me in that 1 or 2 seconds. It was like my spiritual awakening, my burning bush moment. But I had this overwhelming confidence that not only could I do this, but that I had to make it mean something. I had to make it all the misery and pain that I'd put everybody through and myself and everything. I had to make it mean something. And that was kind of the birth of what I do now, although I didn't know then what I was going to do. And I had a ton of work to do on myself. I just knew that I wanted to make it mean something. And, you know, the rest is history. I went off and I had a knee replaced while I was in treatment. And
Really?
yeah,
Wow. What was that like?
I detoxed for a month because I'd had so many seizures. They were scared to death to detox me at regular time. So they took it slow and detoxed me. Then I went off and had knee replacement, came back, detoxed off the hospital meds that they gave me. And then I went off for another 60 days and worked on, you know, the underlying issues that made Randy do what Randy did. And, you know, a lot of that was, you know, a lot of that was traced back to not being Randy Grimes, the football player anymore. You know, I can remember when like I said, I had 5 head coaches, and Sam Weish was my last coach. And I can remember after that game in 1992, our last game, I can remember him putting his hand on my shoulder and saying that Tampa Bay wouldn't be needing me anymore.
Oh,
And and I'd been injured halfway through that year, so I knew I couldn't go try out for anybody else, and so I knew it was over. And I can remember thinking, "This is how it ends," you know. After all that I've been, all the blood, sweat, and tears that I put on football fields all over this country since fourth grade, and this is how it ends with a coach I've only had for 1 year, who has no loyalties to me, who I don't even like personally, you know, putting his hand on my shoulder and telling me that they wouldn't be needing me anymore, and then keep walking by. And I can remember thinking, not that I expected to have a street named after me or a big party, but, you know, I just never expected it to end like that. And I just kind of raked everything out of my locker into a black trash bag and walked out the back door. And Randy Grimes, the football player, didn't exist anymore. And I struggled with that for a long time.
no, I can't
You
imagine.
know, so that was just throwing gasoline on an already raging dumpster fire that was the addiction or the necessary evil. And you know, it wasn't until treatment that I really grieved the death of Randy Grimes, the football player, and that was a real process.
Wow. Yeah, gosh, when you put it, yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, what a
Well, my whole identity was wrapped up in that uniform and with that game. And, I had allowed football to become who I was instead of just something that I was good at. And, that's my fault. I let that happen. But, that's the way it always was. And, I had a lot of work to do. There was a lot of depression and a lot of loss of identity, and I really needed to I needed help reinventing myself. When I didn't have that uniform anymore, it was hard for me to be a father or to be an employee or a neighbor or a husband. It was, and as crazy as that sounds, I see it every day. I deal with it today. With the athletes that I work with the veterans that I work with the first responders that I work with. We wrap our identity up in that uniform, and when that thing comes off, man, we don't know who we are anymore.
Wow. So tell me, I want to know, because and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is very similar to what I had experienced in that when you were sitting there sobbing and you said you felt the warm cloak. Did you have a resolve that you knew that you were clean? Did you understand what I'm saying? That you knew something profound was different, and you had the confidence to move forward. Did that happen? Do you know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what happened.
It's like I'm not sure what that was or what that means, but I have a renewed energy to take a step forward.
Yes.
To get busy doing the work. Whereas before, at least for me, before that experience, the work was work. But after that experience, it's like, okay, let's get it on. Let's figure out.
Before that, it was just doing it for everybody else.
Yep.
Before that, it was just white knuckling it through every day.
Oh, which is,
after that, it was wholeheartedly into it. It was, it was moving forward. It was doing it. It was taking suggestions.
Yep. Imagine that. So what was that flight like home from Florida to back to Houston after? So it's 60 days. So you were gone for what was about 90 days altogether?
90 days. And there wasn't a flight home. I mean, when that door hit me in the ass, I was so scared that I was willing to do whatever they told me to do. And they told me to move. And here I was, 49 years old, former NFL football player. They told me to move into sober living with a bunch of 20-something-year-old kids out of the Northeast. And I did it. And I moved into sober living, and I stayed there for another 6 months. And because I was scared to death to be out there by myself.
Oh, I get it.
And they would let me come back, even though I'd been discharged as a client, they would let me come back on campus every day because I needed to be around my safe people. And I needed for them to see my eyes and hear my voice every day. I needed to stay accountable to my safe people. And I would come back on campus every day and just walk around and pick up cigarette butts. And, I did that for 6 months. And then I started eventually making some alumni phone calls for free. Just anything I could do to stay
connected
around that campus, around my safe place. And of course, I was going home and visiting, but I was always coming back. And because my family didn't really understand that. They thought, hey, you went off, you got well. And, I wasn't well yet. There was still so much more work I needed to do. And over time, they did. And I think they just wanted to see me do the next right thing day in and day out. And eventually, I earned their trust back, but it took a lot of work to do that, and it was hard on them. Me not coming back,
Oh, I can imagine.
But I wasn't ready, Christine. I wasn't ready to come back to Houston. I wasn't ready to come back to all those triggers and people, places, and things, as they say. It was worth it to me to do whatever they told me to do. I needed to listen to people that had been successful.
Right. Well, and I don't know if it was that way. I do know it was that way for you. For so long, we've believed our own lies. It's and we've gotten so good at fooling ourselves and telling ourselves things that aren't true. I totally get what you're saying. It's like I need to be around people where I can go, I'm thinking this. Is that crazy? Or is that true? Or is that, just so I need someone, an outside force to go, you're not nuts. That's the truth. Or, yeah, that's old behavior. And, I got to tell you, Randy, 11 years later, I still need that. There'll be times where I'll call my sponsor and I'll go, okay, here's what happened. Here's what I think. Is that nuts? And she'll go, yeah, put your crazy back in your pocket. That's not true. Stop feeling like that. That's not true. And so she changes, and it's amazing how she can change the trajectory of, especially when it comes to, for instance, a fuss with Rick or something. And I'm like, well, he did this, and she's like, yeah, no, we don't do that anymore. That's old behavior. So let's not do that anymore. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I'm open to go make an amends and do the next right thing. But I was so handicapped on how to live, how to live in my own skin and how to treat you with respect when I couldn't even, when I tried to kill me. How in the hell could I ever treat you with respect? And how, I had to relearn how to be a human being. I had to learn how to be a human being. It was crazy. It felt crazy at first. Crazy.
Well, and that's what the program was designed for. Thank God for Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob. Thank God that they had that divine revelation to put together this program that has saved so many lives. And I jumped in wholeheartedly. Like I said, I was willing to do. I still had that gift of desperation, even in my aftercare, and even still today. I like to think that I still have that. I like to think that I still have that desire to fall out of that car and crawl through those doors. Even today, and it's almost 14 years later. 14 years in September. So I think working in the industry like I do now, I get to see it every day, and I get to be reminded every day of how bad it can get and how I never want to go back there, how I never want to put my family through that again. And but I also know that if it ever happened again, I wouldn't survive the second one.
So share that with me. So where after recovery did you start getting involved as far as treatments? Because and thank you. I've thanked you through social media, but thank you so much for sponsoring 2 episodes of this show. Athletes in Recovery did, and share with me. Where in your recovery for the almost 14 years did you start into that as far as getting involved with treatment centers and trying to give back what you received?
Well, the Athletes in Recovery, like I said, it started at that picnic table that day. I knew I wanted to make it mean something, and I knew that there was a lot of other guys that I'd played with and against out there that were struggling just like me. I wasn't the only one getting in that drug safe every day, and that was just with my team. And there was another 31 teams out there. So I knew that there was other guys out there struggling, and I knew that there was no resources out there for them. So, and this is way after that picnic table experience. This is like another year and a half later, that I started working with the NFL. They formed a player care foundation. Like I said earlier, there was nothing for former players when I came in. So we started the player care foundation. We started going out, sharing my story, and letting guys know that they aren't alone, that they weren't the only ones going through this. And, hands started going up all over the country. These are former players from all over the league. And we were able to help and have been able to help over the last nearly 13 years, hundreds and hundreds of former NFL players, which was my goal originally. Never did I dream that Major League Baseball would get involved, and the NHL and NBA, and pretty much, Christine, every sport you can think of that has an organization that supports their former players. I don't deal with active players because every team or every organization has their own protocols. So I work with every organization that supports their former players, whether it's an alumni or a guild like the Jockeys Guild, or Players Association or Union. So anything like that is who I work with, and I don't just work with athletes. I work with everybody. Anybody looking for a way out of this chaos that is addiction, and it's almost like, and you're going to think I'm stupid when I say this, but it's almost like God allowed all this to happen just so I could do what I do now.
I don't at all think that's stupid.
I used to think football was life and death, but this disease is life and death.
But isn't that beautiful?
And we have so much work to do.
Isn't that beautiful? And again, I'm gonna guess that you feel the same way. It's like when I'm sharing with someone that is still in the throes of alcoholism and or addiction, which alcoholism is an addiction. I am reminded that every single hellish thing that I've been through in my life, everything that led up to that moment was worth it. It was worth it. It was
you to sit in this chair today and talk to me.
And I'll go even one step farther, that if all three of my biological children, because Rick and I have 5 kids together, I got 2 bonus kids. If the 3 of my bio kids that went through most of this, if they were standing here and you said, okay, tell you what, I'll take back all of the horrible things I did in drinking, horrible things I did. I'll take all of those back, and you'll have your mom just as she would have been without the alcoholism. Would you do it? And all 3 would say no. All 3 of them would say no. All 3 of them would say that they know God because I'm an alcoholic. I mean, what is that? And for me, like when I was in the throes of alcoholism, because I too would seize when I would try to stop. I again, believing my own lies. It didn't have anything to do with anybody else. It was me. It's my life. I'm doing this to me. I had no clue what I was doing to the family. I had no clue. I just, it's a family disease. It's a family disease. I mean, everybody is affected, and right. you don't see that wreckage until you get right-minded and come out, and that's when, a lot of the work begins. But all of those things had to happen. And I think that's just beautiful. That I can, it says in one of our books that we alcoholic addicts will reach that other alcoholic addict like no one else can. Like no physician, no lawyer, I just got chills, and I love it when that happens.
No minister, no pastor.
No one. Right? We will reach them like no one else can. And man, that is a gift. That is a gift that you are, and God bless you for, if you're anything like me, you try to be careful. It's like, okay, don't give me that credit, because if you give me that credit, guess what? I'm going to take it. Right. And I don't want to do that, because that gets me back into wrong thinking. I know where all of this has happened from. I know where all of this comes from, and I know where the source is, and I got to give credit where credit's due. But we still did make a choice to participate in that, and so I think that you are amazing in what you've done, because I have heard. Well, I'm just telling you the truth, that I have heard some of the stories of the interventions and stuff that you've been able to do, and you'll just I think that it's a special thing that when you get to heaven, you're going to be able to see all of the people that are going to be able to come up to you and say, I'm here because you made a choice. Yes, God provided, but you made the choice to be the skin, the voice, that I often tell my sponsor, because my sponsor to me was God for a long time, because I didn't have a perception of who that was. And because I couldn't, it was so noisy. I couldn't hear God, but I could hear her. I could hear her. And so she was God to me. And so she is one of the people that I will be in heaven because of her. So that goes a little bit deeper than what we're talking about here, but you just you don't recognize how far reaching your efforts are, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that comes from such destruction. And just, I don't know about you, but I was terrorized in my.
Well, hopefully it's like a phoenix rising out of the ashes. And you said it. It is a family disease, and the way I picture it is like a jellyfish. It's got the tentacles that go everywhere, and it just affects everybody around you, whether they're family or not. Whether employees or workmates or neighbors or people at church. It affects everybody, and I've got to say it, and I never go without saying this, but my family and my wife, my family, my kids, they're the heroes of my story because they never gave up on me, and how do you repay that with everything that I put them through?
With what you're doing,
how do you can only repay it by doing the next right thing, and trying to be the father and the man, that the husband that you always promised to be, but there for about 20 years you weren't.
Wow. Well, I'm so happy that you are who you are, and that you're my friend, and I'm just there is a kinship between people like us that's like no other. Again, a book that I read says that we are like survivors of the same shipwreck. Whereas much as Rick is involved, and I too was blessed in the sense that he came along with me in recovery. Not all of my family members did come with me in recovery, meaning that they got involved in the recovery part of it. And Rick probably knows my recovery program better than I do, quite frankly. But it's not the same. It's just not the same. And so, for someone who is still suffering, that's what I wanted to ask you. So if you can imagine that person, whether it be an athlete, a former athlete that's struggling with pills or medication, or a housewife that is drowning in a bottle of vodka, that feeling of soul just absence. It's just all I can explain it. What would you say to that person? What would you say to that person?
That there's hope and help, and that it's okay to not be okay, but you've got to raise your hand and ask for help. You're not alone. There's other people that have been where you are, and you've got to know that there's hope and help out there. That this is not going to end well if you don't get help.
And it's a beautiful life. Isn't it a beautiful life?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Even on, there's something, and I heard in probably the first week that I was sober, someone said, and it just resonates. And as long as I'm sober, there's no big deals. There's no big deals. That's right. There's no big deals.
We sometimes try to make things big deals.
Oh, but boy, howdy.
The grateful reality is there is no big deal.
So tell me, how do you start your day? How do you start your day?
I start my day with hugging my wife. Grateful that we're still together. And the cool thing is in my recovery and what I get to do now, I work in the treatment industry, but I also get to do a lot of interventions, and I get to take her along with me, and she's so good with families. And of course she understands that role and how to help them. So, I love the fact that we're able to do a lot of interventions together. And, but that's not what you asked me. I start my day with hugging her, and, I get on my book. I get in my big book on my phone, and I'll do my daily meditations and stuff. And, I just get prepared for what I know is going to be part of my day. And that's helping other people, that are struggling with this disease. And, I'm just so grateful that I'm able to do that every day. It never gets old. It's my passion. And like I said, it was like God was preparing me all those years to do what I do now, because this is so important and we have so much work to do. There's so much stigma around this disease, and that keeps families from raising their hand and asking for help. It keeps people that are struggling with this disease from raising their hand and asking for help. And there's so much guilt and shame associated with it. And this happens to good people. And there is no guilt and shame. There shouldn't be any stigma. And we've just got, shows like this. It's people like you that's going to tear down all those walls that prevent people from asking for help.
Well, because you think that the alcoholic addict drug, is under the bridge. Right? It's like, that's not, yeah, you're exactly right. The shame is what I think keeps most people. And what just came to my mind when you were talking, it's like what you were describing your day as far as with Lydia and interventions and working with people. That is an identity that you can throw yourself into, that no one can ever take away from you. No one can ever put that hand on that shoulder and go, yeah, we're not going to need you anymore. It's like, yeah, bullshit, dude. Look to your left or look to your right, because I'm telling you, there's not a single human being on this planet that doesn't know someone that has been affected by this disease. Not one. Not one, at least that I have found. And that's why, as you being so bold about it, it's I was reminded this morning, it was about 11 years ago when I was speaking somewhere, and I was telling a lady, I was speaking not regarding addiction, and I just happened to mention that I'm an alcoholic, and she goes, "Oh, you're an alcoholic?" And I'm like, dude, don't even think about taking that away from me. Now, I don't wear it as a badge of honor. It's that, because then it becomes a pride thing. But I am a survivor of this disease, and when you know that there is a solution, if I knew there was a solution for cancer and I wasn't screaming it from the rooftops, damn me. Right? I know there's a solution for addiction. I know that. I know that to be a fact. And I will keep screaming that for that one person who, like I said, is to the point where they're ready to eat a bullet. There's hope. There's hope. There is hope. And people just need that one glimpse of hope. And I love what you said, Randy, about Lydia too. Last week I had Rick in. And I asked him, and I, before we got here, because we've done this whole 11 years together, but we've never sat and really talked about what was that like for you? What was that experience like? I mean, quite frankly, I was a little scared when we came in and sat down, but he did great, and I want this show, and again, I hate calling it a show, to also have family members to say what it was like for them, because they're, as much as the addict and the alcoholic is in shame, family members are in shame too, right? I mean, they're afraid to speak their truth, for guilt or for fear of judgment and being isolated, and it just, yeah,
last year I went out to visit my son. My son lives in Rwanda, and he took me out to a game park, and we spent the night out there together. And for years, like I said, nearly 14 years, everything's been great. He just wanted to see me doing the next right thing. He was proud of me. He was happy for me. He was, all those great emotions. Okay. But Christine, I never made amends to him until we were out in the middle of this game park just last year. That was my year 13, okay, since I'd gotten sober, that I finally made amends to him. And all these emotions that he's been stuffing down inside came out. And it was such a beautiful thing. And I was so mad at myself that I'd taken that long because I thought everything was good and everybody was getting along and all that. But it wasn't until I said, you know what, I'm so sorry for everything that I put you through. And I couldn't control myself. I couldn't stop with the insanity. And those emotions that came out of him 13 years later, that just proves what a huge family and how we're so good at stuffing down all that stuff.
Well, and clearly he was stuffing too, which ultimately, I believe, right. Ultimately, I believe when you're stuffing stuff like that, that's a cancer. That's a cancer that somehow will reveal itself, So yeah, what a gift that was, quite frankly, for both of you.
Right.
For that to happen. Because I'm sure, I can't imagine what he took away from that, and seeing you take that responsibility, even that far. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, my regret is that I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah, but as well as I do. I mean, who knows? It happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen. That happened. Exactly. That it may not have been received. Who knows? But that's part of the beautiful thing about recovery. That's one that you gave him the gift of being able to put all that down, right? Because when we're carrying so much stuff, But anyway, it's So tell me, how do people get a hold of you? Athletes in Recovery. Tell me all the things.
Yeah. Pro Athletes in Recovery. .org. That's my website. That's my organization, and what we do is, it's athletes helping everybody with this disease of addiction. You can find me at proathletesinrecovery.org, or you can find me at Agape Behavioral Health Care or Agape Treatment Center. Matter of fact, that's where I am right now. I'm in Fort Lauderdale. You should be here.
Oh, I'm telling you, I know.
I love Florida.
I do love Florida. And you're going to say that one too many times, and then you and Lydia's going to have some house guests.
Well, that's fine. We're ready. But no, I live in Tampa, and actually, I live in St. Petersburg. So I'll be heading back over there later on this afternoon. But I work in Fort Lauderdale. I work all up and down the East Coast and the West Coast. So I love Florida. I love Texas too. I've been out there all last week, and it was good to be back home. But you can find me at proathletesinrecovery.org, or you can find me on any of the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And I'm just grateful that I'm able to do this every day and give back to a program that saved my life.
Amen. Well, I am so grateful to you for agreeing to come on and talk to me. And like I said,
I'm proud of you. Proud of you for you're gonna kill it.
Thank you. Well, you know what? Like I said, I'm going to try to stay out of the way and just see what God does with this. And if we, with this little venture, if we reach just one person, then all of it's just completely worth it. So.
Well, I'm proud of you. Thankful for the opportunity today, and I hope everything in Waco's good, and sick and bears.
Amen. All right. You take good care. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon. And give that bride of yours a hug. Thanks for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Keep coming back.